What do you think is the biggest problem in the world? For me, it's corporate money in politics. And the reason for that is it is affecting and making worse and preventing us from change in a huge number of other areas that are pretty existential. For example, war, poverty, climate change. Change on all these fronts is being blocked by corporate money in a massive way in so many countries around the world. And a lot of it's hidden, so that's why it's not a common, serious problem raised by most people. Corporate money in politics is the biggest problem in the world today. It may not seem like it because of all the other problems that we have in the world, but corporate influence is affecting our ability to change so many other problems. Action on climate change is blocked by fossil fuel lobbies. War and conflict are fostered by a military-industrial lobby. Farming practices and desertification are made worse by agricultural lobbies. Obesity, healthcare, housing, all of these are made worse or being blocked by lobbies in their own industries. The problem is that corporate money in politics aligns political decision makers with corporate interests rather than with the interests of the public. So everywhere we look, corporate money in politics is making our world and our societies worse. It affects us all. It even makes life worse for those people that might benefit in one area, like the lobbyists themselves. So what's the solution to this? We must block all forms of donations and support by corporations to public decision-making and political parties. In short, we need a complete separation of corporation and state. That's what these videos are about. But why must we block all organizations, not just corporations? The reason for this is that if we only block corporations, they will donate money to other organizations who will then pass on the money to the corporations, and we will back where we started. We will have just moved the problem of corporations donating to political parties to organizations of other kinds donating to political parties. So we have to block all kinds of organizations from donating to political parties. That is the only solution in this area. Of course, corporations already do this, but it will just get worse. Politicians will still be listening to private interests. The second part of the solution is public financing of political parties. What this means is a small amount of tax money goes with each vote to the political party you vote for. This is very, very important because it aligns the interests of politicians and political parties with citizens. If we don't get money from organizations, then the only source of money is from people through their votes. That's the aim. This means we also have to completely block donations from individuals because this favors wealthy individuals. We also have to prevent individuals from self-funding their own campaigns and political parties because obviously that favors wealthy interests as well. And an interesting one, we also have to limit the amount that parties can charge for their memberships. And this is to close a loophole that will open, or it's already there, but it's not being used because it's unnecessary right now. But if you imagine that we don't allow corporate or organizational donations or individual donations, and we don't allow people to self-fund, and the only other source of money is from votes, public financing, then memberships remain as the one final way that wealthy interests will fund political parties to their benefit. So yeah, we have to limit how much memberships cost for political parties. There are, of course, other parts of the solution. One of the most important is that we probably should have compulsory voting. If you don't know what that means, it's basically a rule that you have to vote, and if you don't, you are faced with a small penalty. I know it sounds like an infringement of our rights, but trust me, it's very, very good. And we'll explain why in one of the future videos. Another important thing is that because we're blocking corporations from donating money to political parties, and they do have genuine issues that they might want to raise with politicians, we have to have transparent advisory bodies set up, some permanent, some on particular issues. And this is an avenue through which organizations can talk to political parties, have their concerns voiced, but in a transparent way rather than with money involved. Two other things that we have to do is that these solutions, the corporate donations ban, individual bans, and the public financing, all have to be written into our constitutions so that they're very hard to change. And finally, we need to teach these solutions in our education systems, and the curriculum needs to be updated to basically inform future generations why a complete separation of corporation and state is so important, and why public financing is important, and why corporations bans are important. So that needs to be in the education system. By putting it in the Constitution and updating our education system, we kind of future-proof changes and fight clawing back. Before we go any further, there are two words that are used quite uniquely in the context of this video series. The first is corporations, as you might have already imagined. It refers to all organizations. And the other one is political parties, and it refers to candidates, incumbent politicians, unelected but trying to be elected politicians, and everybody who's helping political parties. That's active volunteers, campaign managers. And for corporations, it is basically any kind of organization. And the reason we do this is just for simplicity. Rather than say every kind of organization every time, it's just going to be corporations. And corporations are also the biggest donors to political parties. That's sort of 90+% of money, in many cases, goes from corporations to political parties. And of course, when we're talking about political parties, the main actors are political parties. So that's why using the terms corporation and political parties in these sort of catch-all phrases is the way to go.